Hey Axis and Allies players, the good captain here, and welcome to a special video on this channel. This is not one that I intend to leave up for too long. So the inspiration for me making this video and commenting on this game is because I volunteered as a playtester for this version. I did sign an NDA, so for the time being, I'm not going to be able to talk about anything regarding the playtesting process. However, I will speak as someone who has played this game against multiple different human opponents. And the spirit and inspiration for this video is the following. I want Renegade Games to sell a lot of copies of Axis and Allies Africa, and I want the players or the people that buy this version of the game to enjoy it. So with that as a backdrop, there are a few things I would like to say to help manage the expectations of the Axis and Allies playership. So Axis and Allies Africa is what I call a theater level game. I would put it closer to Axis and Allies D-Day, Guadalcanal, and Bulge, and it seems to take bits from each of the three games I just mentioned. For example, it has stacking limits just like D-Day, it has reinforcement points with which to purchase new units just like Guadalcanal, and it has supply tokens just like Battle of the Bulge. But this game is, I feel, much more complex than any of those. In fact, I think it might be the most complex and in-depth version of Axis and Allies published to date. So to my point here, there are many rules and many exceptions to those rules or addendums to keep track of. So for example, the baseline stacking limit for each territory is 8. The exception to that is anything that's printed on the map that says otherwise. There are also certain units that don't count against those stacking limits, and those are trucks for land units, and when you are attacking, these also include air units. So that rule or set of rules by themselves is not overly complicated, but when you layer in that rule and others like it, it can become potentially overwhelming to some players of Axis and Allies. To help with this, in conjunction with the game designer, Axis and Allies has put out a quick reference sheet where a lot of these types of rules are covered. I've put that in the link in the description box below this video, and much in the same way as the FAQs, I highly encourage anyone who owns a copy of Axis and Allies Africa to print it out and throw it in the box. I think this by itself will really help improve the gaming experience, especially the first few times you play. And my next inoculating comment kind of picks up off of the stacking limits rule. Once you've played a few times, players might notice that the primary antagonists in this game, which are the UK and Germany, have 7 ground units plus 2 air units. In fact, the UK arguably has 8 ground units given the American Lend-Lease tanks. So as you play, you might notice that the amount of units available for purchase actually exceeds most of the stacking limit values of the territories. And this is sort of a first time in Axis and Allies situation where you have more units than you're able to put in a territory. Axis and Allies D-Day had a stacking limit of 8 per territory, but there were only 3 ground units, so it was pretty easy to kind of master the best balance in that version of the game. Another example is that Global 40, which has 5 ground unit types, has no stacking limits. So again, there's a fewer amount of pieces and no limit on how many of pieces can be in a certain territory. So it was kind of easy to find the right balance. Africa is going to feel different. It's going to feel a little weird in that sense. It's not going to be obvious, at least not right away, what powers benefit most from which pieces. Not only will you have to make decisions about what to buy for your own offensive and defensive operations, but you'll have to pay very close attention to what your opponent is buying. This is colloquially known as response purchases in Axis and Allies. Response purchasing against something your opponent bought might be very interesting in this game. For example, if your opponent has gone heavy into armor, perhaps you, seeing this purchase, might want to invest heavily in anti-tank guns. Then again, you might not. Anti-tank guns aren't the best on the offensive. So what are you going to do after you blunt his attack? The point here I want to make, what I'm going to try to communicate to the wider community about this version of Axis and Allies, is that this is part of the fun. There might be multiple purchase strategies, there might be multiple ways to respond to your opponent's purchases. Striking the best balance when you're so limited by other rules of the game is part of the fun. I would encourage players who encounter the difficulty of wondering what the best builds are to embrace this part of Axis and Allies Africa. Perhaps it was designed this way. Perhaps it was designed for players to solve through these problems. Perhaps whatever rule might have bit you in the rear end isn't a design deficiency, but there for you to solve through, to push through, and make yourself better as an Axis and Allies player. I feel that even seasoned Axis and Allies players will struggle through their first game of Africa. They might even struggle through the second game, but as you play more games and the game engine becomes more familiar to you, you'll get more and more enjoyment out of it. You'll be looking through the rulebook less and less. Rules will become more and more intuitive to you. My advice is to allow yourself to learn and to grow and to try to give the game a chance. And one other area I want to discuss in regards to this game is actually in the credits. And I want to focus on just a few names here. And that's Andrew Seligman, Dave Jensen, and Eric Zielinski. Renegade reached out to the Axis and Allies community through Facebook and through the .org website, and these are the folks who answered the call. And in my opinion, if you're going to dip into the community to try to get playtesters, these are the names you want to see in the back of an Axis and Allies game. Andrew Seligman is a very avid player of Global 1940 2nd Edition. He's active on the forums and heavily involved in what's called the League. David Jensen is the owner of the AxisandAllies.org website, and I've had the privilege of playing him several times, and I can say that he is an astute player, quiet, very intelligent, and a very lethal player. He also stomped everyone in the Guadalcanal tournament at the Strategicon convention in February. And finally, Eric Zielinski is a forum regular as well. He's one of the very few players I know that is extremely lethal in just about every version of Axis and Allies, up to and including zombies. He stacks games quick, fast, and is very brutal over the board. He's actually been a contributor to this channel. He is the primary person responsible for my video describing how the Russian Revolution works. And he really gave me what for a few times in 1914, demonstrating the nuances of that rule. And even though I've had disagreements with each of these gentlemen, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, these people are players and they play a lot of games, and these are the people that you want to have involved in playtesting any version of Axis and Allies. Anyway, I just thought it would be worthwhile to say something about that right now. And again, if Renegade's going to reach out to the community and ask for the playership for support, these are the types of names you really do want to see in the back of the book. And finally, as I've always said, the best way to get good at a game quick is to find opponents who are better than you and play them. And to that end, there is an opportunity for anyone within a few hundred miles of Los Angeles to come to the Strategicon tournament in LA at the Airport Hilton. And that will be from August 30th to September 2nd. Matt Hyra, the game designer, will be there, and he'll be hosting every day but Saturday. That's Friday, Sunday, and Monday. I've said in other videos, and I'll say this again, if there's anything that holds a candle to Gen Con on the West Coast, Strategicon is it. Okay, for better or worse, that concludes this video. I hope that helps clarify for some people who might be wondering if they should get the game, whether they want to get it or not. And I hope it helps improve the playing experience for those who already own it. That's it from me. I hope to see at least some of you at the Strategicon tournament on Labor Day weekend. Thanks for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and bye-bye.